Hello there and welcome to this video which is looking at tackling a problem, converting it to pseudocode and then turning that pseudocode into Python. And I like to call these the triple Ps. Now the weather station here records monthly rainfall figures in millimeters for a year starting in January. So we need to design an algorithm using pseudocode or a high-level programming language which will use these 12 monthly rainfall figures as an input. The program should output the total rainfall for the year, the mean monthly rainfall for the year, and the month numbers, one for January, etc., where the rainfall was above the mean. All outputs should contain suitable messages where helpful. And we've got some test data. So for instance, if the 12 inputs are 113, 104, 100, 96, 90, 88, 92, 94, 101, 112, 122, and 118, the output should be total 1,230, the mean is 102.5, and the months where the rainfall was above the mean was the first month, the second month, the 10th month, the 11th, and the 12th month. And this is worth a total of 6 marks. So as we get stuck into the algorithm, it's worth, as we're working our way through, trying to figure out what the question is asking of us and what skills we need to produce. So if we've got all of our figures in millimeters, it says, looking at the data down here, looking at the test data, all of those are integer values. And it starts in January and it wants us to record all of the monthly rainfall figures. Now in the question it says 12 monthly rainfall figures. So I'm going to have to ask the same question 12 times. And for that, I might need a bit of a loop. So let's first look at doing that then. Because if I loop and ask that question 12 times and ask them to input the rainfall for January, input the rainfall for February, input the rainfall for March, for example, then I can just add up the total rainfall for each of the months as I go along. Once I've worked out the total for all 12 months combined, I can then work out the mean monthly rainfall. So in this one here, I need to, the first question or the first problem, I need to add up all the months. In the second one here, I need to take the total and divide it by how many months we've got in the year, which is 12. And that will produce the mean for me. Then, once I've worked out the mean, I need to go back through all the months of data again and then compare it, probably using some kind of if statement. So if the value is greater than the mean, then we need to output that. Now, because I'm going to have to go back through all the data that I originally inputted, that means I'm going to have to store the data. So I need a suitable data structure to actually store the data. And for that, I'm probably going to use an array. And in my array, it's going to have all 12 inputs, and they're going to be stored inside each element. So let's get stuck in then and create our data structure and get data into it. So the first thing I'll do on the right hand side here is I will declare my array. So I'll call my array Rainfall. And Rainfall is going to have brackets. And how many elements do you want in there? Well, remember that rainfall is going to start at 0 and it's going to have 11 elements. Okay, and that, if you picture what that looks like with a badly drawn array from myself, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're going to have 11 slices or elements in my array. And that's what it looks like when you create this. Now you have to tell the data structure what data type you're going to hold in there. So for example, rainfall 11 is, and then you say what you're going to put in there. So for us, it's going to be integers because it's going to store the rainfall of each month. So it's integer. Now in addition to that, remember we need to add up all the months. So I'm going to need a variable to add up all the months into. So I'll say total is integer. I'll add them all up. I'm going to need a mean variable because when I add them all up and divide them by how many, by divided by 12, I'm going to have to store that somewhere. So I'm going to say mean is, and I'll use real for this. Now you can use real or float because it's a floating or decimal point value. When I divide it by 12, it's likely to come out as something point something. So that's why I'll use a real for that. Now when it comes down to month numbers, so 1 for January, etc., I've already got my month numbers covered by the index position in my array. So my arrow there is pointing to index position 0, for example, and this is pointing to index position 6, for example. Now when you output this to the user, obviously you won't output position 0 or month 0 because there are no month zeros. Months start from 1. So I'll have to add 1 to the index position so that it displays correctly to the user. And you'll see that appear a little bit later on. So now then, let's look at getting some data and populate this array. Now I need to do this exactly 12 times. So if it's exactly 12 times, I'm going to need a static loop or piece of iteration. And for this, I will use a for loop. So for, my local variable is I. I'm going to set that to 0 because that's our starting position in our array. So I is now given the value of 0, and we're going to go up to 11. So 0 to 11, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So there we go. That's going to loop. It's going to do this 12 times, whatever code I write in here. Now it's really important that you indent. So if I want to get something into my array, I will say rainfall. That's the name of the array. At the position of what? So if I wanted to put something in position 0, I'd write 0 in there. If I wanted to put it in position 6, I'd write 6 in there. Now obviously you can't write rainfall 0, rainfall 1, rainfall 2, rainfall 3, because that would be inefficient. So I is keeping my index position. So I will put I in here because I is equal to 0 first time, and then when it loops, I will increment I and it will move to 1. So this will keep the position as it goes through the array. I is my index. So there we go. So rainfall at the position of I is assigned or given the value of. So I'm going to use an assignment operator here, and you're going to give it a value. Now we need an input from the user, so I'll say input, and my message to them when I open the bracket and speech mark will be enter value for month, comma, I. And that will say enter value for month 0, because it starts off at 0. But I said before, I'm going to have to increment this or add 1 to it so it makes sense to the user. So that says I plus 1. And that means it won't output 0 to the user, it'll output 1 to the user, which is exactly what I want. Now, that will loop 12 times and then we'll get the inputs into the array. At the same time, every time I add it, I'm going to add it on top of the total. So total equals total plus the thing I've just entered. Rainfall at the position of I. So the data you've just put in there is now going to be taken as well and copied into the total and added on top of it and then put back inside the total variable. So that's going to keep a running total of everything that we need. I'll increment I by using next I here. Next I. So that makes sure that it goes from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's it. And once I've got the total sorted, I can work out the mean outside of the loop. So I'll say mean equals whatever the total is divided by the 12 months of the year. And I can output these now. I can say output, I'll use some brackets. Total is total and mean is mean. Now I need to work out the number of months above the mean. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just put months above mean. So months above mean, and then I need the same thing that I did before. So I'll say for I equals 0 again. to 11. So go through my data again. Now, in order to go through my data, I need to say if rainfall array at the position of I is greater than the mean I've just calculated, then output the month number. Now, the month number is I. So just output I. So for example, in the test data over here, it just outputted 1, 2, 10, 11, 12. Now remember, because I is going to produce just the number itself, I need to add 1 to it so that it doesn't start at 0. It'll output month number 1, 6 will be actually month number 7, 10 would actually be month number 11, and 11 would be month number 12, for example. So I need to make sure that my outputs are correct. And that's it. Next I, to make sure we loop through it all. And that is our algorithm complete. So let's make sure we've done everything. We're going to get marks for initializing our variable. We're going to get marks for the loop structure and the incrementation. We're going to get marks for creating our mean. We're going to get marks for the correct outputs. We're going to get marks for the second loop structure, going through and comparing. And we're going to get marks for the if statement in here to compare each element of our array to our mean now that we just calculated. And that's where we get our marks from. So have we done everything we need to? Well, yes, we have. We have outputted the total rainfall for the year, the mean monthly rainfall for the year, and we've outputted the month numbers exactly like provided in our test data. So join me in the next video while we turn this pseudocode into Python code.